My name is Youssef Beg. I'm the assistant editor of the Sacramento Bee. I want to welcome our guests, Josh Pane and Kevin McCarty. This is a discussion for the assembly seat that's in the 6th district, covering mostly Sacramento and some of the eastern suburbs. Today we just kind of want to hear from both of you about sort of your policies, your platform, your personal background, and kind of why voters should lend their support when it comes time to make that vote in May and June. So I'll give you guys kind of 3 minutes to make some introductions and tell us a little bit about yourselves, and we'll kind of go to questions after that. So we'll start with Kevin. Just tell us a little bit about you and kind of why you're running again this year for the 6th district.
Thank you to the Ed Board for hosting us. Much rather be in person, but we're still working through this pandemic. So first, you have to excuse me. It's spring break over here, so I may get some teenagers knocking on the door in a little bit. They're sleeping in there. I gave them some money to go to Starbucks for breakfast, so hopefully they're on their own, but just want to warn you. I am the assembly member for the 7th district currently, serving in my 8th year in the assembly. Previously, I was a city council member for 10 years, running here again in my hometown of Sacramento in a new district, the 6th district, which is about 70% of my current district. And the 30% that's new is really special for me. It's the areas where I grew up, the areas where I went to elementary school, middle school, and high school, where my late mom bought her first house out in Carmichael. So it's a really special area for me, kind of coming home. So I feel like this is my hometown. This is my community. And, I'm proud of the work that I've done as a public servant for the last 8 years in the assembly and prior as a council member. I've always prided myself on being somebody with ethics and values and a progressive vision, but not just a show horse, but a workhorse, somebody who can literally get things done and deliver for my district and for California. I have been chairing the Assembly Budget Committee for 8 years, overseeing the entire education budget from early ed to K-12 to higher ed, college and university. So proud of the work that I've been able to do to make record investments in our public education system. Last year, my law, after 8 years, became a reality where now we have free pre-K for every 4-year-old in California, which isn't just great for low-income kids, but for middle-class families, which can't afford $2,000 a month for pre-K. That's more than it costs to go to UC Berkeley. Now it'll be free for middle-class families as well. Been working to get our schools back reopened during this pandemic, which has been hard. But kids and our youth are our future, and they dictate what's so important to our global economy going forward. So that's key. Higher education is, of course, the thing that my passion as well. I've been working to expand access for Californians, not just in access and financial aid, but focusing on housing. I have a big measure this year to make affordable student housing available at all campuses. And lastly, I'm focused on the issues that matter, the issues of the day. I have innovative bills on substance abuse disorders and people revolving around our criminal justice system and homelessness. I've been working to come up with lots for locations for the city and the county to have homeless sites here in Sacramento, and look forward to the rest of the discussion. So thank you for having us today, and look forward to the Q&A.
Thank you, Kevin. Josh, 3 minutes for you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Josh Pane. I served on the city council back in the 90s. I served on the school board, the county board of education, back in the 80s. As I looked back, I said to myself, what is going on our streets, in our river parkways, and in the parks that we so dearly love? What's going on is a crisis in homelessness, but the crisis is really in mental health, it's in criminality, and most importantly, it's in the open drug scene that we see on the streets. This is the problems that we see, and that means public safety, and then it goes to accountability. And so I decided to run because I saw nothing happening in those areas. A lot of money being spent, but the facts are the facts. Let me give you one example. In the county budget for homelessness, $43 million in all of what's going on in homelessness in the county. That's money coming from the state and the federal government. What we see is absolutely ludicrous. No one has spent the time to really look at what? We need to look at the specifics of what these folks are doing. This is focused on, first and foremost, mental health. My mom was mentally ill for 59 years. 59 years of my 59 years at that moment when she died. That means at 3 months old, she went into a mental institution. First, the county hospital where she born me, and then to Napa, DeWitt, and Stockton. Over and over again. There was a system of treatment. Today, we have no system of inpatient treatment. This has caused major problems on our streets and our sidewalks and in our parks. Public safety comes out of this issue of Proposition 47, Proposition 57, and most importantly, the reduction of the prisons in California and the population in the prison. That alone contributed 45,000 people to the streets in 1 year when it passed in 2012. And then each year thereafter, it contributed more people. We're not doing anything for these poor souls on our sidewalks. We have to have inpatient treatment, number one. Most of the funds that are spent on outpatient treatment. Outpatient treatment is going to get us nowhere. I'll quote for my opening from Nick Petrus. In Nick Petrus's
Josh, that's your time. Sorry, keep an eye out on the chat in case you're not. Okay. But let's go ahead and use that to jump into questions. And obviously, homelessness is one of the biggest issues in our city right now at the city and county level, but also at the state. And Assemblyman, obviously this week, you lent your support for a bill that would clear encampments on the American River Parkway, which has obviously been an issue in our region for some time now. Is it reasonable, given the lack of shelter and housing, for us to relocate them at this time? I mean, how would you explain this policy to someone who might be skeptical of clearing encampments without shelter capacity that's obviously lacking not just in Sacramento, but around the state?
Yeah, thank you. The Parkway is our jewel of Sacramento. I've delivered $20 million to improve public access, made it a state conservation area to draw in more public money. It literally is our regional Yosemite, our Tahoe, it's our draw. So I think there's some places you can't have camping. You can't camp in the middle of a football field at McClatchy High School. You can't camp on the state capitol. You can't camp in the middle of Highway 50. You can't camp in Yosemite if you're homeless. You can't camp on the beach in Tahoe or Santa Cruz. This is a sacred place. It's a public park. It's not safe for people who use the park. It's not safe for the homeless. So this is an area that we're saying, hey, we should not have camping here. There were 60 fires last year. It impacts our environment as well. It impacts the parkway. But yes, we need to work in concert, which is why I'm doing exactly what Mr. Pane talked about, delivering money for the city and county to build sites. I'm excited the county's opening a tiny home site that I read about in the Bee this week. I wrote a bill last year to create a Cal Expo site, 10 acres, to have a campus there. I'm very optimistic about this ballot measure the city's putting on to get them to stop dragging their feet to say, to be able to stand up to NIMBYs and cite these locations. So this thing works in tandem. It's not a panacea, but one thing I think is clear, we can't have camping on the parkway for public safety, for recreation, and for environmental reasons.
Thank you, Kevin. And Josh, same question to you. I mean, do you feel like, this bill is the right move for the American River Parkway? Even if there isn't necessarily shelter or housing that we could immediately put these people into?
Yeah, these are Band-Aids, Band-Aids, Band-Aids. If the Assemblyman had stayed more than 15 minutes in the 9-hour hearing on the LPS Act last year, just sat through that hearing and listened to who's out on the streets, this is a Band-Aid. We don't need any more Band-Aids. We need to change the LPS Act, I said this in front of the Senate in a piece of legislation in 2020 as a volunteer. It got ignored. The Band-Aid won't help anymore. We have to recognize that, number one, we need to change the LPS Act. Willie Brown, in his autobiography in 2004, said something very simple. He said, if we don't admit that we need to impose treatment on some of these folks, we will be sitting here at the end of Gavin Newsom's second term as mayor. We need to admit that. This is not a housing crisis for these folks who are burning down the parkway. If there were 60 fires last year, I'm on my bike every day. There were hundreds of fires over the last 8 years, and nothing has been done about the base problem. First, the LPS Act has to be changed. The Assemblyman has done nothing on that. Second, when you look at police and public safety, we have to look at Proposition 47, Proposition 57, and AB 109, the early release of all those prisoners starting in 2011. If we don't look at those three elements, the open drug scene, mental health, and criminality, we're just band-aiding. We don't want to put band-aids on this anymore. So please, let's look at it for what it is. I've walked hundreds and hundreds of homes now, and people don't even go to the parkway. It's not because of the 20 million for access. It's about the human beings that we need to take care of. And some people will need treatment. All of our money, 90%, 95% of our money is going to outpatient care. Come on now, we can do this. We can do better than this. I know we can.
Kevin, I just want to, since, Josh was, criticizing some of your work and some of the bills and things that you've given support to, just want to provide a minute to maybe respond to some of that.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but the highlights are, Prop 47 and 57. That's will of the voters. So I'm not sure what Mr. Pane is talking about. If he wants to go back and talk to the voters, you can do that. It's nothing to do with the state legislature. So those are ballot measures. And as far as the LPS Act, I am leading on that. There's a proposal called Care Courts. I'm a co-author of that today, which would have mandatory treatment for those people that are homeless and have serious mental health disorders. 3 years ago, I tried to include Sacramento in the pilot, which just included San Francisco. I wasn't successful. So I've been leading on this issue for a number of years. I also have a bill, which I know the Bee has written about, as people shuffling through the criminal justice system, which would have drug treatment for people that are homeless, drug disorder, and in the criminal justice system. And there's a vicious triangle of those three that we see too often.
And Josh, obviously, Care Court is navigating the legislature right now. Is that a program you're supportive of? Do you feel like that's a LPS reform that could work? Just a minute to respond to that.
There is already a mental health court in Sacramento County. We need to change the law on the LPS. Nick Petras was convinced of that in 1989. The P in the LPS. All you have to do is read 24 of his 500 pages in his oral biography, and I can send the link to it. I wrote about it in a 2020 article I published called A Third Way. What Nick Petras said was simple. This is not complicated. It's about getting people treatment. There's a mental health court to help do that. Prop 47 and Prop 57, the legislature has the ability to amend those acts, either by its own power or put it on the ballot for people to reconsider. We can't just ignore these facts that are there. So first and foremost, there's a mental health court already. There's a drug court, but Prop 47 and Prop 57 is taking the the stick away from the drug court we have in Sacramento County.
Okay. All
These
right,
are-
Josh. Let's go ahead and pivot to the next question, and I want to pass the mic to my colleagues and continue this discussion.
I can jump in here. I don't know what's going on with my camera, so I apologize, but I want to continue this discussion about criminal justice reform. So the debate over criminal justice reform and increasing public safety is top of mind for many voters right now. There's been an increase in violent crimes over the last 2 years in Sacramento, but unfortunately much of the political discourse revolves around ballot measures that addressed over-incarceration and misdemeanor crimes. What's your view on this debate in California, and what policies would you introduce or support to ensure our criminal justice system is fair, but also protects the public? Josh, let's start with you.
You know, we have to reverse these items. Just because the voters passed the Safe Neighborhoods Act, we have to reverse these specific problems. You know, every day I walk and I hear these same things, that Prop 57, Prop 47 had reversed these ideas that if someone had committed a crime, whether it was a misdemeanor or not, that there were consequences. There are no consequences right now. There are no consequences up to $950. That's under this legislature. That's under the voters, but we can reverse that. We must reverse that. I don't know how much clearer I can be on it, but remember one thing. Just sitting around, just looking at it, we're not going to do anything. We have to identify it for what it is. This is not a housing crisis for these folks we see. This is specifically a crisis of drugs, crises of criminality, and a crisis of mental illness. I can't ride my bike down the street without seeing someone laying over a pole with their pants down. When my mom left the house completely naked when I was 5 years old, 7 years old, 9 years old, she was apprehended and given treatment. That doesn't happen now. So I say we need to create that treatment again. Treatment inpatient. Inpatient. Thank you.
Thanks, Assemblyman.
Yeah, crime is an issue, but voters want to address crime, but they don't want the old solutions. They don't want us to warehouse people like the 1990s with 3 strikes. They want innovative solutions. What does that mean? Helping people who went through the criminal justice successfully reintegrate. I've worked on bills for employment for people getting out of the criminal justice system, allow them to join the Conservation Corps to get their lives back in order. I'm doing another bill this year focusing on helping people so they don't become a statistic as far as recidivism. That's first and foremost, smart solutions. We do need to think outside the box of other things. One, we have way too much gun violence. Guns are way too easy to get in the wrong hands. I'm working on that. You know, there's too many loopholes for people to go and get guns. We have too many people who are domestic violence abusers who have restraining orders that haven't been properly enforced. We need to make sure that we step it up on that. But we also need to do things differently. That's why I've been working on this bill for 2 years. The governor vetoed last year. I don't know why. It passed the legislature unanimously. It's a pilot for YOLO. This year it's going to be a pilot for YOLO, Sacramento, San Joaquin, San Diego, and Santa Clara. What it would do, it would focus on just what we talked about earlier with drug courts. It would have drug treatment as opposed to incarceration for people that are convicted of a felony that would have, like, let's say, a 2-3 year sentence in either a county jail or state prison. So in lieu of that sentence, they can go get drug treatment, which many times drives their criminal acts. A lot of people are committing these crimes to feed their drug addiction. So yes, we need to acknowledge we have a crime issue, but we need to have real, smart, data-driven solutions to address this. And I'm doing just that as a member of the state legislature.
I'll jump in here with a question for each of you. California has more and tougher gun laws than most other states, but legislators are still looking for ways to stem the sort of violence that has racked Sacramento in the past year. Should the legislature pass an excise tax on guns to fund violence prevention programs, a version of which died last year for lack of support, And what else can state lawmakers do about this? And let's start with the Assemblyman first.
Yeah, I support that measure. I co-authored it last year. I'll do so again. Look, when you go buy paint, you pay a surcharge for the negative stuff that happens with the paint. When you go buy a TV, you pay a surcharge for the negative stuff that happens when you recycle a TV. Negative stuff happens when you buy guns. So we know there are data-driven programs, which like Advanced Peace here in Sacramento, which works. I would use those revenues to fund programs that we know are effective. But yeah, California does have 100 gun laws. I think 4 I have authored myself, and we still have a gun problem. It's a national issue. People can drive to Reno in 90 minutes and buy an arsenal of weapons and come back and sell them on the streets. They can go on the internet and buy ghost gun parts and make their own gun. They can go to gun shows, which don't have proper oversight, and buy weapons, which Rob Ponte recently uncovered, and he's prosecuting a few folks on that. So I'm working on a couple bills to clean up some of those issues. I'm actually working on a bipartisan issue with Senator Nielsen, who's a conservative Republican here in the Sacramento area, which focuses on those people that get flagged for buying, if they're armed prohibited and they go and try to buy guns or ammo, they get flagged, and we would notify the local law enforcement right away that, hey, so-and-so is trying to buy weaponry or ammunition illegally. This law is actually based upon an ordinance that I wrote as a council member 15 years ago, which is really effective to get guns off the streets here locally. I just talked to our police this week, and they said it was really effective. So I'm trying to look for smart solutions, not just looking for a headline, looking for smart solutions to stem the violence of too many guns in the wrong hands in California.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, this is ignoring our societal problems. We can continue to ignore them. You guys are going to be around a lot longer than me. And when you have children, you'll see this isn't so much about those guns. And I don't own a gun. I don't want a gun. This is about our society. The Assemblyman has reigned over 8 years of this society. It's ludicrous, this thought. We have to do more programs in the neighborhoods where we need help. Let me give you one example. AB 109 incarcerated 45,000 people, and they spent $3.2 billion. They released those amount in 109, and they sent $1.2 billion to the sheriffs and probation. They kept the other $2 billion. That money should have gone into neighborhoods where there are problems. We're not going to solve this by allowing guns to come in from Nevada, because they'll continue, as the Assemblyman said. We're going to solve this by going into the neighborhoods. The Assemblyman wants to defund the police. That's his whole concept. I disagree. When I was on a Meadowview neighborhood call, the first thing they wanted to tell their council member was simply, hey, don't defund the police. Help us with more programs, but we want police. Your own newspaper this morning from the Chicago Tribune had an opinion piece from Chicago. It was obvious what's going on. These are problems of family and neighborhood. That's where we should put the money. Stop putting so much emphasis on this idea of the gun. Put more emphasis on education, more emphasis on family and society. That's the way we're going to get out of this. We're not going to get out of it by charging more money on guns so we can put more money into it. The homeless issue, really, this whole concept. If you believe it's all about housing, as the Assemblyman has for 8 years, well, then it'll continue to be about housing. But we know it's about drug abuse and the open drug scene we have now. We know specifically it's about criminality, and we know it's about poor mental folks. We got to help them get off the street.
If you don't mind, Yusuf, can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, go for it.
Josh, I heard you just now say what you felt like it was about more often, but I didn't hear any specific ideas to help. And so I was wondering.
One specific idea I gave, simple. The $3 billion that we were spending on prisoners in 2011, the legislature then appropriated $1.2 billion to sheriffs and probation.
So you would take $1.2 billion and give it to what?
No, that was what they sent to the sheriffs and probation when they were releasing these folks from prison.
Okay.
I suggested the other 2 billion because it costs 3.2 billion to house those people in state prison. That other 2 billion each year should be going to neighborhoods where they need the help.
But what programs specifically would you give them
program
to?
from the Roberts Family Foundation in North Sacramento, which I support. Those are real programs. Those are doing something. Those programs help the families, help youth in the community with after-school programs. It helps youth in the community in summer programs. And the Roberts family has to struggle to find funding. So let me just be clear. We were spending $3.2 billion on these 45,000 people in jail. The legislature dismissed 45,000 out. They sent $1 billion to probation and sheriffs, and they kept the other $2 billion.
Can I respond to a few things
Yeah,
here?
I was going to ask you in a second, Miss. Hang on one second.
Here, we should be putting that proportionate amount. If we're really going to dismiss people from prison, we should be putting that amount into these neighborhoods where they need help, into the Darryl Roberts types of programs. Yes, that's
Okay.
exactly. $2
Thank
billion.
you, I
If we're
appreciate
going to send $1 billion to the sheriffs, send $2 billion into those neighborhoods.
Okay.
And stop fooling
And
around.
then, Mr. Assemblyman, I was wondering if you could specifically, I mean, obviously you can speak to whatever you'd like, but is that possible to take the $2 billion?
Yeah.
Is there a step there that we're missing?
No, I think Josh is reliving the past with some fuzzy math there. So AB 109 was literally like 12 years ago in a different era of the budget during the Great Recession, and Jerry Brown had these maneuvers to keep the state afloat. This is when the economy was falling off the cliff. We're in a different era now. That's apples to oranges. So it's really not relevant. But yeah, I would fund this excise tax and to fund programs exactly what he's talking about in the neighborhoods, which are proven to keep gang members from stop reoffending, from keep getting guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have it, for funding youth programs. I'm all for that. And just for the record, I don't support defunding the police. I've never said that. I'm not saying anything about my opponent here. I think we should focus on the facts, not fallacy here. So yeah, let's move on from that. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, let's go ahead and pivot to housing. Obviously, you know, we're at a deficit of 2.5 million units statewide, and the governor and the state housing and community development agency has just kind of changed the way it's sort of out. It's looking at local expectations and housing goals for each region. And so, you know, one of the things I like to kind of hear from you guys, this debate often comes down to the issue of discretion and local control. And that can often be a deterrent to passing policy that I think much of the public is very supportive of. How much discretion do you guys feel like local governments need, given the amount of the deficit we're facing and the barriers that often kill projects? So Josh, let's start with you. I mean, where do you kind of fall on this issue of local control?
Well, let me just say I'm involved in a project in El Dorado County, and we're proposing 112 cottage units to the Board of Supervisors up there. 90 of those units would be for the workers of 2 hotels that we're proposing. The local government there has been very receptive to that, linking housing to jobs, so people don't have to drive up the valley or come down the road, within 3,000 feet of their jobs. These are tiny homes, 112 total, 90 would be used for this purpose. So I think local governments have the ability to do this, and they will if you give them a shot at it. I don't know that there needs to be more restrictions on local government. And I think that these programs, I'm showing what we believe, that you have to link housing with jobs. Otherwise, it's no good at all. And that's a live program I'm doing. I'm proposing it in front of the Board of Supervisors in El Dorado County. Affordable, so that those folks in the hotels can live right there.
Assemblyman, where do you kind of fall on that debate, and what policies are would you pursue if elected again?
Yeah, first of all, I warned you about the teenagers, and they did come in. So just, but yeah, I think this is a big issue, and cities aren't doing what they should be doing in improving housing. I think that City of Sacramento has done an amazing job. They're a pro-housing city, but other jurisdictions aren't. Other jurisdictions in the foothills, for example, aren't building their share of apartments. And it's a crisis of this day. Young people, including yourselves, have a difficult time buying a house. You have a good job. College graduates can't afford housing. And why? It's pure economics, supply and demand. We're not building enough housing. So a couple of years ago, I worked on a bill, became law, which says that cities, if you don't zone enough land to build multifamily housing, we're going to hold you accountable and hold back some state tax dollars. I supported the measure SB 9 and 10 as far as zoning for duplexes and fourplexes here by right in cities. It's really not a relevant issue for Sacramento, as I said, because we've stepped up. The county of Sacramento, I think, has done a good job as well. But other cities in California have not stepped up with their fair share. And that's why the housing industry is having a tough time building enough housing. So we need to do more in this front. I'm also working on a big bill this year on student housing, which would fund 25,000 new housing units with this surplus in California with a revolving loan fund for UC and CSU. So think about more housing next to Sac State or Aggie Square here in the Med Center, which I'm working on. More housing for students helps those students, but what else does it help? The neighborhoods that are getting squeezed, that don't have enough housing because they're being serving students now. So we need to look at this from all fronts, but having local government step up and do more of their fair share is a priority for California.
May I just have a moment on that subject?
Yeah, we can give you both one more minute. Yeah, sure.
We can just keep spouting these tried and true concepts, or we can look at the budget numbers on it. It takes almost $170,000 per lot to build a new home before you even start building. So we have to address that problem, the root of the problem. We can't believe that just putting pressure on cities is going to do that. These systems are from the 19th century and they're in place. If we think zoning East Sacramento land for duplexes and quads is going to fix our problem, it's unbelievably ludicrous. You have to look at the core issue of how much this is costing just to get something out of the ground. Can you imagine that? $170,000 before you start anything.
Yeah, Assemblyman, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of fees, fund housing. I concur, but it's nothing to do with being a state assembly member. That's what cities and counties do. So, if Josh wants to run for city council, you can change the fee structure but the state assembly doesn't have a role in local housing fees for new development.
Absolutely, the state assembly does.
I want to pivot now to climate. The Public Utilities Commission is considering a reform of rooftop solar programs that give generous subsidies to households and make it easier for widespread adoption. Utility companies say the cost for these programs gets pushed onto lower income residents. So I'm wondering, where do you stand on this issue, and what role does rooftop solar play in California's clean energy transition? And Assemblyman, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm a big supporter and fan of rooftop solar. We launched the industry here in California, before my time, 10, 15 years ago. It's taken off. I think we need to stay the course, but like everything else, it's not black and white. Politics is a lot of gray in the middle. I think the PUC can come up with a common ground solution, which I think the governor has asked them to do. I know SMUD has here locally, which hasn't killed the solar industry, and it allows the energy companies to realize there are fixed costs in the transmission line. So I do understand that the majority of people who were early adopters of solar, just like electric vehicles, are the people with means. But I don't think that we want to get rid of it, because we do have, a massive climate change and air quality problem here in California and in our region. And a lot of that is because of the electrical it needs and power plants and so forth. So having more of us going to a carbon neutral energy plan with rooftop solar is a key ingredient to our future. So it's not something we're going to vote on, as you said. This is an action of the Public Utilities Commission, and I believe they're finalizing something that I hope they can be a middle ground that allows the utilities to recoup what they need to pay their bills, but also don't kill the rooftop solar industry.
Thank you, Josh.
We need the rooftop solar industry. We need each individual to be able to do what they need to do at their home. That's how simple it is. Thank you.
I can jump in with another question here on climate too. I mean, California was known as a world leader on climate policy for some time, but even the Assembly Speaker has admitted that we're not leading like we used to. And there's been a lot of ambitious bills that have been killed in the legislature in recent years that could have aided the clean energy transition or helped reduce carbon emissions, to meet up with our plans for 2045 and even before that. Building trades and labor groups have been largely responsible for obstructing a lot of those policies and influencing those debates. If elected or reelected, would you be willing to stand up to the trades if they organize against the bill that could achieve some of those goals? Josh, let me start with you.
Which bill are you talking about? Which concept, Joseph?
We're just talking about kind of larger climate issues within the Capitol and the way labor groups and building trades often obstruct those policies and largely result in killing them in recent years. Would you be able to stand up to them if they organized against the bill that could reduce greenhouse gas emissions or ease the transition to clean energy?
I could stand up to anybody, but we have to get at some of these problems. Let me give you one example of how ludicrous this is to think that we have to go completely to electricity. Garbage and recycling companies have created systems to put gas in their trucks from food waste. Food in the landfill and organics is the second highest emitters in our world. Next to black carbon, then it comes to food waste. And the idea that we're not going to incentivize that specifically to get this food waste out of the landfills is ludicrous. So some of these ideas have to be looked at just to say no more combustion engines when we have engines that are produced and driven by food waste. This is where we go too far. And I think that we have to just sit back, look at this and say, no, we need to use food to power our garbage and recycling trucks. To say that they all have to go to an electric truck is outrageous. So that's just one example of where we have to be careful. So I can stand up to anyone, but the issues at hand has to be common sense as well.
Thanks, Josh. Assemblyman, the same question. I mean, obviously, the building trades are a formidable force in our state, and they've obstructed a lot of sensible policies. Would you, have you and would you, if tested with future policy, stand up to the trades if needed?
Yeah, this is Exhibit A. I have a bill which would mandate zero emission vehicles, not just electric vehicles. It could be hydrogen. It could be fueled by alternative fuels like food waste. That the trades opposed last year, and I've still pushed my bill forward. Interestingly enough, that it became policy this week anyway, with the governor's energy commission essentially doing it through a regulatory action. So my bill was debated whether that was necessary to have any legislation anyway. So that's happening. But the big picture is we have a massive climate change and air pollution issue in California, and the largest contributor to that is mobile sources. So how do you do that? You get cars off the road that are gross polluters. And you know who fights that? Oil companies. They're the ones who are behind this. They're the ones who really who fight against these policies. Sometimes the trades are part of that, and they're part of the industry and some of the refineries, but it's oil. But if you look at cars in the future, it's not the cars that are going to be fighting it, because whether the cars are powered by clean fuel or the old-fashioned way of oil, that's the real issue. And we need leaders to stand up to that industry. And I've done so over and over, and I'll do so again. They probably don't like my policies and campaigns, but I know my constituents do, the people of California do. And let's face it, climate change became a really political hotbed issue. It wasn't a hotbed issue? Air pollution. That was embraced by President Nixon, President Reagan, George Bush on EPA. Air pollution is a real issue that we can all get around. It's a public health issue. That's as much of an issue with climate change with our mobile sources. So I'll continue to do that issue. We're pivoting this year, focusing on the electrical grid, because even if everybody does get, a Leaf tomorrow, a Prius, what have you, or a Tesla, you don't have enough power in the grid to turn over. So it's going to take some time. So I'm working on those issues to speed up charging stations. My bill became law last year. And this year we're focusing on the electrical grid to make sure we're there to meet the needs of the zero emission car future.
So in a matter of hours yesterday, both the legislature and Governor Newsom backed down on requiring COVID vaccinations for California schools this fall. Many Republicans and vaccine skeptics were celebratory of those decisions. But for families and the immunocompromised or vulnerable populations, this was a very disappointing backslide on public policy. So do you agree with this decision? And let's start with Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. I was open to both those bills. I never had a chance to vote on them. Let's start with the school one, because I know that my kids are in school. Look, we already mandate kids to get vaccinated to go to school. There's a list of 12 or 13 things on there. This would be adding an additional one to the list. I support that in concept. I know the state is saying let's wait till it's fully approved at the federal level before we add it on. I think that we should. I think this has gotten too politicized. People historically have been against, the vaccines. It was an issue 5-6 years ago when Pan first brought it up. But, public health is paramount. And when those are officially approved at the federal level for kids, I would support adding those to the list. As far as the employee mandate, I think first for public health workers, for people on the public side, that's a necessity. I support that. But I do in concept think that employers should be able to have policies which they think meet their workforce, meet their needs. But this pandemic is evolving and changing on a monthly basis, daily basis sometimes. So we need to see kind of where the facts are and go from there.
Thank you, Kevin. Josh.
We should be guided by science and the CDC. I don't think it was a backsliding at all. There should be no mandated vaccine for school children. The science doesn't prove it. We're on the other side of this for now. If science comes along and proves it, perfect. We should do it. Thank you.
Did you want to address the other part of it, the employers as well?
What's your question?
Do you also support it being mandated for employers of a certain size or public health employees, or
no?
Not at all.
At all.
Okay.
And I'm fully vaccinated. I have the booster. My wife has done the double booster, but no, we shouldn't.
Okay.
I can jump in with. Go ahead, Anna. Go ahead.
No, you go, Yusuf. It was your turn anyways.
Well, I want to address education. Obviously, this is something that is close to Kevin in a policy sense as leader of the budget subcommittee on education. But Obviously this week we heard about the population losses in California's public education system. Obviously there's a variety of reasons for that, but it's become another example of maybe perhaps public faith in the public education system and how families are sort of going about the decision making when it comes to schools. And so, Josh, to start with you, I mean, sort of how would you use your role as an assemblyman to restore public faith in public education, given the hardships it's experienced over the pandemic and sort of the discussions we're seeing with private schools, parochial schools, school of choice, and charters? How would you use your platform to restore faith there?
Well, restore faith. I think it goes back to the neighborhoods and the family structure. We try to band-aid over all of these things and pretend like we can have some magic wand to make this all be better. And magic wands have not worked for the last 8 years, obviously. I would simply give voters and parents that choice. We have to have strong choice in schools, whether it's Phoebe Hearst here in the district that has a program, public program of choice. And I think that's absolutely essential. Too often we pretend and we think that throwing more money at this will work. We have to pay teachers more. There's no doubt in my mind. And I think that choice and more revenues for teachers are key to help the overall. But we're not going to restore faith, Joseph, if we pretend like the pouring performing schools are because of money. We have to get down into the family structure, and we have to get down into that societal realm. The Roberts Family Foundation is one of those foundations, as I've said, I've supported and I continue to support. They help the families and they help the youth in those families. That's getting more faith in the system.
Assemblyman, yeah, I mean, same question. And Josh also noted, just teacher pay, and obviously Sacramento just experienced a prolonged labor strike. And, I think folks in the community are wavering on the public education system in California a bit. How would you sort of, reassure them and reestablish that faith?
Yeah, well, the big picture is we do have declining enrollment. That's birth rates, population happening in California. It's not just this year, it's going back. That's not necessarily a crisis, that we're giving more money for schools to serve fewer students. So kind of it's a good issue to have your school. They're not going to get less money because 40% of the state budget goes to education. We've doubled funding for education in the last 10 years. So we've given schools way more money. We used to be in the bottom 5 states. Now we're in the high 20s, I think. So we're doing a good job there. But there's still issues that linger. We still have a stubborn opportunity and achievement gap, which is why, my marquee thing to make universal pre-K is a reality here in California. And every economist says if you want to address student achievement, early ed is the number one thing you could do. I'm proud that my law is going into effect in a couple months. We do have an issue recruiting more teachers. That's true as well. We don't pay enough for people to work in this profession. We make them go through hoops and serve another year in school to get their credential and to have more student debt, which is why I'm working on a bill this year to make the teacher credential you can get in your 4-year degree. So you don't have to go and go to school for another year and forego income and get a salary less than your friends who graduated with a 4-year degree. So that is a factor. Overall, we have education is a mixed bag here in California. Here in Sacramento, Sac City is a great example. We have some communities, 80% of our district here are low-income students who start behind, they stay behind. So it's not just the school system. We need to have other pieces at play, more mental health support in the classrooms. I talked about earlier about early ed. I'm working on, Mr. Pane talks about the Roberts Center. That's an after-school program. I'm funding a bill this year to have universal after-school programs, because that shows that, one, it keeps kids out of trouble after school. More kids that go to after-school programs, maybe they're less likely to get in the shootout in K Street Mall a couple of years later. And then also it focuses on student achievement. It's shown that it really does well for student achievement. And lastly, it helps working parents who can't afford childcare after school. So it's not just school. There are other pieces at play that could help with education achievement in California. No panacea. I'm at the forefront on working on these issues, and will continue to do so if I'm reelected.
Well, I think we're getting close to the top of the hour here. I thought maybe for just the last couple of minutes, we could give you guys sort of 2 minutes each, just to sort of, some closing thoughts or anything you want to end the session with. And Josh, we'll start with you.
Okay. Hey, thank you for the opportunity, you guys. I appreciate it. It really comes down to homelessness, public safety, and accountability. Homelessness is about mental illness. It's about criminality. And it's about the open drug scene we see. Several years ago, 3 years ago, I called Phil Cerna and I said, Phil, there's 3 women on the streets in Midtown. I need to get help. They really need it. Dana over in McKinley Park, Diane Fitzgerald over at Fort Sutter, and this one poor gal who lays on the sidewalk on Capitol Avenue. She's been there for 6 years. I finally embarrassingly say, I need to help her. Called Phil, and Phil said, well, we're putting $88.5 million more in our mental health system. That's on top of the $300 million that the state sent down. 3 years later, the 3 women are still there. You could say 8 years later, the 3 women are still there. This is the problem. We don't have any way to help them off the street. Nobody's talking about it, but I keep talking about it. My mom was there. We had facilities for my mom. We have no facilities now. Ultimately, if we don't admit this, with the criminality that's there, and ultimately with the open drug scene we have going on, we have students that can't get underneath the freeway because there's needles. The camps are underneath the freeway. We have Caltrans. Think about this. The legislature appropriated $100 million for Caltrans this year to clean up. They clean up once, they come back. They clean up another time, they come back. These are just Band-Aids. We need to think.
Thank you, Josh.
Cooperatively.
Thank you. Assemblyman, 2 minutes for closing thoughts from you.
Yeah, thank you for the Bee for hosting us today. And I'm running for re-election for the same reason I ran for office for city council and assembly as well. To make a difference in my hometown of Sacramento, to be effective, to deliver, to bring solutions to the problems that we face. I'm proud of my record, making a difference. Some of these issues aren't easy. I would say that homelessness is an issue top of mind. It's going to take the federal government, the state government, and county governments all pull in the same direction. I think I'm doing my part by looking for innovative solutions, whether it's, focusing on more sites like Cal Expo where we can have, a tent village or a tiny home type village, giving monies to the cities and counties so they can fund their locations as well, lowering barriers for emergency housing under Caltrans properties. I'm also looking at issues that are top of mind for addiction in the criminal justice systems, as I mentioned earlier. But first and foremost is the issue that I care about. The future of California determines on an educated workforce. It helps families escape cycles of poverty and break intergenerational poverty education, but it's also the ticket to our economy going forward. We need a highly educated, highly skilled workforce to fill the jobs of today and tomorrow. I've been delivering results in these fronts for a number of years, and will continue to do so as well as the Assembly member for the 6th District, and look forward to continuing to serve in the California State Assembly. Thank you.